Super League spotlight shining so bright. Interviews and news, come join the hype.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Super League Spotlight. Rona back again.
We are indeed.
We haven't scared anyone off yet.
No, not been
and-
cancelled. Tick.
Well, I thought after doing our predictions last month, and I said last week, that I thought some people might be on our case a little bit.
I think that maybe shows just either people don't want, like, people like to talk a good game, they don't want to put themselves out there, or on the flip side, a bit like we said, is very open, and I'm sure we're going to dive into that because we've now seen another couple of rounds of games and teams. But but do you know what? We were trailblazers. That's what we were.
I like it. And I did get a few messages saying, like, I can't believe you've put, well, Elliot from Hooping and Luton, very vocal about Manchester.
I wonder why. I can't quite work out why he'd be so vocal about them. I mean, is he from that rough area?
Has he got links? Has he got links?
I don't know. Is he linked in that club? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I need to investigate that.
But no, it was well received, I think, the first episode, so ready for number 2. And I think let's start with the last few weeks in the league, because we've seen Essex score 100 on London, we've seen Newcastle win the local derby, we've seen Caledonia, Sheffield, Essex and Oakland's make it through to the semi-finals. Absolutely loads going on in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because when we first sat down, there wasn't a huge amount to go on, talk about. We're still looking at who Manchester were signing, etc. And now we're like, okay, you feel like you've got a sort of better understanding. I would say there's not been any real surprises. The trophy has kind of gone how the trophy's gone. I think mostly convincing wins across the table. However, obviously the Sheffield and Manchester game today, I think, was a really solid matchup, and I was interested to see that because I know that Sheffield like to come out and be really aggressive on defence, double team coming out in the guards. And I'd seen from Manchester yesterday, their guards were competent, they were capable. So, that did go down to the wire. It resulted in the 3-point win for Sheffield. So I think that'll be a tasty return match. But no, I think the trophy so far has gone how people at this point in the season would expect it to go.
Yeah, I think you're right. That Manchester Sheffield game, Sheffield were really intense. Like, I normally associate Caledonia with that level of intensity on defense, but they were really the full court press quite a lot, which I'm seeing across a lot of teams this year.
If you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's also the style of the game and where the game is going. You can't just come back and sit in a half-court set. You're going to have to pick them up, and even if it's not necessarily a team full court press, it's the guards picking each other up. It's the big kind of stepping up and cutting off lanes. They're looking to do these things because the game is being played faster, and the longer you have the ball and the less time the other team have it, the better.
Yeah, so let's just talk about some of them. London, Essex and Ipswich, that little mini group. Obviously we'd seen Ipswich and London that before episode 1, and we wondered how much of that was just settling in, but Essex, I mean, what was it, 104, 48 or something today, 53 yesterday against London?
102-47.
Right, so I mean, that's a big margin.
It is, but though I think that kind of shows where Ipswich are as our NBL team, stepping up, that they can challenge, but also we've talked about London, and I'm sure we'll talk about them later. They're not who they were. They're not funded the way they were. They're not in the arena they were. They're not, being backed the way they were. I could keep going on. I didn't want to start so negatively. So there's a lot of things going on there that I think actually Essex have retained some of their core squad. They've brought across Taylor O'Brien. Shall mention her later. I would be a terrible person. I give away all my spoilers, eh? So, so Essex, I would expect them to come out head and shoulders above on that group. That doesn't really surprise me. I thought, the big game there was the Ipswich London. Would London have enough to get them over the line? They didn't. And we saw that there.
And when Ipswich played Essex, they were without Harriet Wellham, weren't they? So I think if they had her, that might have been a bit closer than it was. But yeah. So Essex made it the first team in the semi-final. Let's talk about your home team, Caledonia. How have you felt their campaign has been?
I think it's got them to where it needs to be. I think Eagles and Durham, there's still there's still a bit of a split there in terms of where the teams are at this current moment. We didn't see Harriet across both games, which is big for Durham. We saw Sarah go out in the Eagles game, so then she wasn't ready to sit up. So I think actually Durham put up a decent fight yesterday against the Gladiators. I would have expected the Gladiators to win, and they did take that win, which is good for them going off the back of a European defeat midweek, a tight one as well, and going into their next European away game, Montpellier. I think they've kind of fallen into the order that I would expect them to as well.
Yeah, I had a quick chat with Donny after the game yesterday. Just talking about how it takes 5 or 6 games possibly to get new players embedded in, and he's kind of starting to see the progress that maybe they want to see as well. So yeah, I think Caledonia did what they needed to do. I think you're right. But I was impressed with the way Durham battled, because having only 7 there yesterday without Sarah and Harriet, they were competitive in large parts of that game. Obviously, the margin was quite big at times, and Durham managed to get that back in that fourth quarter. But yeah, I was impressed with the way they battled against Newcastle the week before, and that. So I think when they've got all their pieces together, I might have put them a little bit too low. Just saying.
Okay. But I mean, you got to see the game. There is that gripe, isn't there, that we weren't able to watch the stream. And I'm like, Kerry's hit 4 from 4 threes, but you don't really have an understanding when you're looking at the stats, how that is on the overall game. But I did look at court time when I saw the final score, and I was looking at stats, and Gladiators are a team who very much will share the court time. They've got to share the load, and you could see that. I think the most amount of time was Kat Tudor, and I think she had about 26 minutes, and then everyone else was sort of floating around that 20-minute. So yeah, I think you can see that the court time was well shared amongst them as well.
Yeah, and I think Kerry McGee hit those 3. I think they were mostly in the third quarter. Just every time I looked up, I was with my camera, because obviously the stream wasn't working, problems in the week with the networks and things like that. And a little shout out to Lee Davey, the head coach of Durham, because he did try very, very hard, and a lot of work went into not getting the stream working in the end. But a lot of work went in that week to try and sort that out. But I was there with my camera, and just every time I looked up, Kerry was hitting another 3 in that third quarter. I was like, right, okay, here we go.
Yeah. Well, you could tell us whatever you wanted. You could have been like, and then a dinosaur ran across the court, and we'd be like, oh well, missed it.
It is up now though, if you want to watch it.
It's up now. Cool.
It is up now. Yes. Without my commentary, I might have to record some delayed commentary to the match.
Well, that's what they do. Like when I did some BBC stuff, I was like, what the magic? Actually quite a lot of the football and stuff, they dub in the commentary after. So I was like, that's quite cool, because then you know exactly where to peak, where to trough, the outcome. You can look dead clever, like as if you are predicting the future. But anyway, I will almost, it's like anything, isn't it? It's like sometimes when you see behind the scenes, it ruins it, like Never Meet Your Idol.
Yes.
Although I did meet Joe Lloyd during the week, which was pretty cool. Just name drop that in.
Yes, I saw the picture. You look like fangirl number 1.
I send it to you? Don't know how you saw that, Mark.
Who else then? Well, we've mentioned Sheffield Manchester, that game today, which was probably the tie of the round, as it were. That will be good moving forward, and I think that shows how close those top 4 that we kind of highlighted last week. Those top 4 of Caledonia, Auckland, Sheffield, and now Manchester in the mix with Kumish Patel.
I mean, you said top 4 there, and I was like, well, I think I need to stretch out to top 5, because you've then got potentially Leicester. We could go 6, Essex. It'll be interesting to see how things play out, how things settle as well. But I'd never discounted Manchester, but you can only work with the tools you've got. I could only go with the.
You have them down
as
6th.
I think I went 5th.
5th.
I actually went back and checked 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd done 5th.
Okay, so I did put that post out on Instagram yesterday about anyone with any kind of discussion points or any questions that they want us to answer, and I'll bring them up again. Elliot from Hoopin and Luton, do we want to change our Manchester predictions?
No, my woman sticks to it, and I will double down. But no, I think it'll be interesting to see. I don't think it's not like they lost a game yesterday, and I'm like, oh yeah, that shows they'll be 5th. I just mean as in I've got to stick with what I said, because I was working with the tools I had, didn't have all the squirrel back channels knowing who was coming in where and coaches and various other things, so I went with it, and I've got to stick by it, right?
Well, okay,
They're mid
I'll
table
stick
for
by
them.
mine then. Don't you worry. But I did have them fourth. Just saying.
Yeah. About who did you go with for the win today?
Oh, well, okay. I was just being different to you though, so let's
Bit
move on
of a
to
cop out, isn't
Cardiff.
it? Bit of a cop out.
Oh man, let's move on to Cardiff and talk. Well, Cardiff, I mean, two big defeats, Leicester and Auckland's. Are we worried
Yeah,
about
and I
Cardiff this
think
year?
I've had a couple of people message me to be like Cardiff League question mark, and I'm like Cardiff League double question mark. Like I think it's great that there's a team there. You've got someone with the experience of Steph Collins, but do they have backing investment? All that sort of stuff. Their travel is pretty hefty on them. So it's tough. I mean, they've yet to hit 40 in either of those games. However, those two teams you've mentioned, we've both talked about being within that mix of the top four, top five. So, it's hard to judge a team on that top end. You've got to give them some time to see how it goes. They could come into it, but Cardiff are currently a team who year on year are sort of around that bottom of the table or at the bottom of the table. So you've got to look at what are they bringing to the league potentially, and or is there another way they can go about it to build themselves back up to come back in? They've obviously got dedicated girls. They're turning out a team. So you would never want to turn that away, but also you've got to look at, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, like where is the bottom floor for the SBLW, and what do you want that to look like? I never want to see a women's team not be in the top flight because obviously it can be good for the game, but sometimes, yeah, we'll need to look at it as it goes down the line in Cardiff play. But they might go and play some sort of that mid to lower table predicted teams, and fortunes might turn in their favour. However, at the moment, they've had a tough and a big start to their trophy campaign, and I suppose league campaign this year as well when it kicks off.
Yeah. I mean, it's not getting any easier for them. They've got Sheffield at the weekend as the league starts.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they're probably that step above, maybe Leicester.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it doesn't get any easier.
No. Sport, right?
Absolutely. So, as you said, no real shocks. And Caledonia, Sheffield, Essex, and Auckland have all made it to the semi-finals. Who have you got for the win?
Who have I got for the win? Overall, you're
In
jumping
the
ahead.
trophy. In the trophy.
Okay, yeah, but you're jumping ahead. Oh, you really put me on the spot here. There's part of me
Well,
that wants to go Sheffield, just where they're at the moment. I feel like they've come out all guns blazing. Everything's going off. They got the win against Manchester. That will get, confidence up. It will just be really interesting because you're going to look at league play. You've got the Gladiators in Europe. We're going to be looking where the injury is going to come from, where the illness is going to come from, where they do not plays, the travels. How do the teams continue to gel? Or we always talk about teams gelling and players getting on, but the opposite can happen. I've been in teams before where as the season goes on, team dynamic can get worse sometimes, because egos can raise their heads and people not getting the court time they expect maybe, or people, lots of things happen. Like there can be family issues and be personal things. So yeah, that's a massive disclaimer there, isn't it? For me not to choose a team because there's so many variable factors. But I think, the way Sheffield have come out and started, but I think Manchester probably slightly less time training and working together. So yeah, I think between them at the moment with the way things are right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Sheffield, partly because it would be nice for them to win the Betty Codona Trophy.
Yep, okay.
But
You're
that
so
first
nice.
quarter
Like that would be
today,
a
I was
lovely
really,
bow.
really impressed. I thought that they looked really impressive, and obviously we're still very early on in the season. And if they can look that impressive now, 2 or 3 games in, give it a bit more time. So I'm looking forward to seeing Sheffield this season. But so that's our prediction out of the way for the trophy. I did put that post on Facebook, on Instagram yesterday, and a few people got in touch. One of the most interesting questions we had was what needs to happen for women's basketball to build in this country? I mean, where do you
Money.
start with a question like that?
I know.
But
money.
let's dive into that one because it's a huge question. It's a debate and it's a topic that's kind of discussed across the men's league, across women's league, GB, the whole British basketball scene, really. And where do you stand?
I think it's an investment, isn't it? And I think you can see that both for the positive and for the negative, where investment has been there and been taken away. Lions, Euro Cup, winners, down to can't be an WNBL team. And then on the flip side, you've got teams like Caledonia who were really brought together under the one banner when the Timneys took them over. You've got Manchester with their investment this season. You've got Oakland's. I mean, Manchester finished 9th last season, Oakland's 10th. So out with those playoff berths, and we're talking about them challenging for all the silverware and pushing into that top, and that's purely down to investment, being able to recruit better. So I think that's really important. But at the other side of it, I don't doubt the personnel behind women's teams, but see, when there's a men's team attached, like with your Londons and your Leicesters, it just really irritates me, and I'm like, what is the excuse? So I watched the Leicester Riders men were playing. You had potentially the best commentary duo outside Grant and I, obviously. No, but your best commentary duo in sort of Dan Rutledge and Anthony Rowe. And then they're playing in their arena, and then you switch on and you watch the women's game. They're in the netball centre, like, couldn't be in any bigger writing, with no commentary. And I'm like, how is one club allowed to have such a different product for both the men and the women? And then obviously it was announced this week that the London Lions women would be going back to their roots. I mean, I see how they framed it. And I caught this snippet of the GM being like, oh, build an atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. But build it and they will come. And you were getting crowds to the Copper Box, whereas you've now moved them, a half-hour drive or like over an hour by public transport away to Barking Abbey. And I just think as a player myself, or as an athlete, it's like these women aren't training any less, they're not training any harder, they haven't worked any less to get to where they are compared to the men. It's the same, it's the same load, it's the same everything. Often the women can be more successful as a team. Again, London Lions as an example, but they're not given the same sort of the same investment. They're not given maybe the same respect, I would say. And I guess that's maybe where more with the Sheffield teams, the Caledonian team, with the Manchester, you can see actually there's more of that equality and that parity between men's and women's. They're playing out the same places. They've got comms teams in place. I really enjoyed the Manchester product yesterday with what they were putting out. So yeah, it's interesting to see, and it does boil my blood if I think about it too much. It's something as a female player that it's hard because I was former Scotland captain. I managed to play overseas, managed all these things, but there was no league to play in for so long here. And it's amazing getting to see like the likes of, Kerry McGee and Alex McIntosh were playing European basketball, and I was like, if I was 20 years younger, I would hope that I would be able to like try and push my name into that mix and that sort of thing. So it's amazing they've got that, but I know me and so many before and after have not had that opportunity, and there's still so many girls around the country that don't have these opportunities, and you're like, but why? And it's like being able to challenge people, stand up to people and be like, but why should this be happening? And that has to come from within organisations as well. And it has to come also, like you see Andy Murray, he's a great advocate for women's sport. He's like, does that make me a feminist? Well, sure then. And he's very good at calling it out. And I think sometimes when it's maybe us not being affected, it can be easy to be that bystander and not get involved. But yeah, shifts need to happen, and shifts are happening. And I think people either have to come on board or they don't. And I think on the flip side of that, you've got teams like Cardiff and Durham who don't have the men's SLB teams attached to them, and they maybe have more just of a university backing. However, like you say, Lee Davey, Steph Collins, they're putting in all the work behind the scenes, and they'll be desperate for investment and sponsors, and you really want them to get that. But they'll only be able to get that if sponsors can see where the investment can lead to, and they can see, the coverage they can get and the social media output they can get and everything, on that level. So yeah, I think it's all down to investment, isn't it? And it's about having people going, no, this is what we want to do, or people, if they're coming in speaking to clubs, being like, but this is an entire club. It's not just the men's side you're buying into. It's not just the women's side you're buying into. You buy into both. Like when I think about the Caledonia Gladiators' first women's game 2 seasons ago, it was at Lugan Sports Centre, because that's before we had the facility that they've got. and you maybe had 50 to 60 people there, and now regularly you're having a few hundred there. At one point we're up at 800,
Mhm.
and that's within 2-3 seasons, and that's because not many supporters transferred across from when it was the Pride set up. It was a whole new entity sort of thing, so it's not as if there's already built fan base there, and you can see how it's grown, and they've played out the exact same place as the men since they've moved into facility.
Yeah, I think when the Timonies took over, they were very adamant and very clear. The message was that whatever one team gets, the other team will get. And that kind of attitude, I think, has helped that grow, because people can see the product and can see the value of the women's game alongside the men's.
Yeah, and I think as well the Timonies, like I always tell a story. And I'm like, when I was playing Scottish National League, like we'd be playing St Morris's was the home court, Friday night lights, and the Timonies would be there most of the time, Alison and Steve, and they'd they'd given us like our minibus, or they were the main sponsor in our kit. But they're just coming out to Cumbernauld in the pouring rain, probably winds howling a gale on a Friday night, supporting our National League team. Like they have been around the basketball scene, like even at our amateur level for such a long time. And I would be like, oh, who are those people? Because they'd be like, oh, great game, Rona, really enjoyed that. And they'd be up at Dundee watching our cup finals. So like these guys are very invested and involved, but I think that shows through in their passion for wanting to have them and have the boys and the girls teams under one, because they've always been like that. They didn't just appear on the scene. They have actually been around that basketball world for a long time and allowed what was then the Lady Rocks. Back in the day.
Back in the day. But I mean, you look at women's sport in general, you look at, say, football, that's probably been the biggest growth across women's sport in recent years. I mean, you had just down the road to me today, you had Newcastle and Sunderland again playing each other at the Stadium of Light, and there was 16,000 there for what is now the second tier of women's football. I think 5-10 years ago, you probably would have had 200-300 people there at the most. I think that's kind of, it shows when you do invest and when you do put time into it, there are people that will come to it. And that's what I see your point totally about Leicester's, and say that netball centre, surely it can't take. I mean, I would love to talk to someone from Leicester. This is not just me complaining, but
yeah, it would be interesting. Like, it would be great to get, we obviously we want to get people like that on, because it would be interesting that maybe there's a justification we don't know about. Like,
yeah,
maybe badminton are on the main arena floor. Who knows?
It's always badminton. But yeah, surely it can't be that hard to schedule a Sunday afternoon at the Morningside Arena in Leicester for the women's games. But yeah, again, I'm willing to listen to a conversation. So what else? What happened to women's basketball? We've talked about investment. I know we talked, it was earlier today or yesterday, about kind of grassroots and youngsters coming through and being excited about the sport and building a fan base. I know Newcastle have done that very well in the last 4 years since COVID. Well, I'm probably before, but I remember going to a Newcastle Eagles game pre-COVID, and I think there was the 5 of us, probably about 6 or 7 other people, just in a balcony at the top of the old Sports Central building that they had. And you look at now, regular 800 people, 7 to 800 people. They've really built that kind of fan base using, and they've done coaching with the players an hour beforehand, getting like 30, 40, 50 youngsters with their families coming in. And I think Newcastle have done a really good job, because, as I say, 7 to 800 people each game is kind of testament to that.
And it's the youth's the important part, because the youth's where your next players come from. So you have to get youngsters excited. You need to get them involved. You need to get parents along. Like, that's where it comes from, right? And that's why, you go to school, and then through school, you're like, well, I'd like to go back to that. And I've yet to meet somebody who hasn't enjoyed the product at Play Sport. They've come along, and it's because they've got tickets from school, or their child's had some, tasters in school, or they've seen someone with the kit on, and they've been for someone's birthday party, and that's how you get people along. Or when the Ball or Nothing, the documentary, that sort of brought more people in as well. And the youth are so important because the youth are the future, and without them, you don't have that. I have that, and you need the players coming through in the pathway, but you also need, the referees, the coaches, the statisticians, the team managers. Like, there's so much of that will come from the next generation. And I think a lot of the clubs that are being successful are implementing that. They're implementing the community programs. They're using the players as role models. They're getting them out there, because to show the youngsters they can do these things. Like, you can't be what you can't see. So if they're out there doing that, they can be like, okay. And especially with, a lot of the teams are investing in British talent. So it's not always just, oh, I'm not American, so I'm not going to make it as a player. You've got the English people, you've got the Scots players, you've got these players there. We're seeing quite a few Irish players come over, especially into SLBW this year. So, that's showing these youngsters that you don't need to, be American to be successful. And also you can start to see players going through pathways over here that you don't necessarily need to go to the States and do your college to come back. Although I know it's still a very popular way to do it. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't need to be your one and only option to take it further as well.
We would love to hear everyone's views on this, because there's kind of, I would say, no easy fix, but there's lots of things that could happen quite quickly in British basketball to really build the women's game. But in the comments below, make sure you let us know what your thoughts are all about. What would you do to build women's basketball up? Would love to have that interaction with you. Right. Let's have a quick look. One of the other questions we got was from Ian, and talking about which players we think are going to have the biggest impact. And I know we looked back in week 1 about players kind of we thought to watch out for. Are they impressing you so far? The ones you said? I know Brooke Flowers had a great week for Essex.
I know she went into team of the week. I was like, thank you. I will doff my cap. I think what I've intentionally tried to stay away from the players that I mentioned, because I feel like they have come into the league, they're making a good impact. I've kind of picked up Taylor O'Brien. She's averaging 23.5 points. She looks very comfortable, over at Essex Rebels, that she's settled in there well. I think she's someone that's going to continue to be dangerous, and she's going to continue to be a threat. So I think, she's somebody that I think in tight games might help make or break it for the Rebels. Also, I think Georgia Gale's come out looking like she's got something to prove, and she's really come out and taken on that leadership role within her team. She's averaging 20.5 points, she's on 5 assists, 2.5 steals, and she's looking hungry and she's looking ready to play. And they needed that sort of intensity today with Manchester. And I think that's exactly, she's setting the stall out and the team is following on from that. So I think those two at the moment, I think they are going to be important.
Yeah, I had Georgia Gale written down as well.
No, I'm glad you always ask me first, because then I always get first dibs.
It just looks like I'm copying now.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to mention Marina again at Durham as well, because 19 points yesterday, a 13-7-6 game the week before against Newcastle. She's like settled in really quickly, and I think that can only, when they build further, I think that can only, I think she's going to have a huge impact on Durham. And I think Newcastle will be sad that they missed out on keeping her, if they tried. I don't know. They might have tried.
You making a rumour there that she turned them down?
Yeah, let's put it out. Marina turned Newcastle down.
I think that's kind of called clickbait, isn't it? When you're like, oh, what was it happened in my local area that shocked local residents? And it's like, someone left their bin out on the wrong coloured day.
And you've got to listen to like half an hour in to find out whether Marina... Yeah. So the league starts this week. We're kind of done with the trophy for a little bit. The league starts this week. There's one game that I'm kind of got my eye on for a game of the day, and that would be possibly Newcastle-Leicester. The other games are quite possibly one-sided. So Manchester-London, Cardiff-Sheffield, Essex-Nottingham, Oakland's-Durham, and then that Newcastle. Only Caledonia don't have a game.
Yeah, well, they're obviously away playing Montpellier. Yeah. Casual Montpellier during the week. But is it Countdown where they hold, this shows my age, when they hold up their answer, I was like, I'd pretty much said the same. Yeah. I was like, opening weekend, Eagles v Riders be the most interesting. Although I was like, Essex and Nottingham, it could provide some good viewing, was how I paraphrased. However, comfortable victories, like you said, Manchester, Sheffield, and Oakland's. So we're kind of on the same page with that. I think there were some good things out of Nottingham. It
Yeah.
was interesting to listen to Siobhan Pryor in comms because obviously she knows the players very well. I mean, she is the club. So that was actually good hearing her insight at the time. Really nice to hear they're bringing in some of the academy players to do the comms alongside her. So props to them for doing that and for her name escapes me, but she did a great job considering it was her first. I know how nervous it can be on your first co-comms. But yeah, I think Eagles Riders could be an interesting one. Riders having to travel, see how they get on, Tierra Hodges, see how she goes about her business. Riders though with that tenacity, and sometimes I feel like Eagles they can stutter a bit if things quite and you can allow the other team to go on a run. But I look forward to that game.
So have you got no basketball to go to in the next couple of weeks, or what you planning on going to see?
What will I be going to see? Well, I'll watch the Montpellier game during the week, but then the Gladiators men are also at home, but it's our half term this week. So I may or may not
Weren't you on
be.
half term like 2 weeks ago?
No, so we have a September weekend up here, which I found very strange as well. But remember, we go back earlier because we finish in June.
Yes.
As someone who has taught both north and south of the border, I'm very aware of the different holiday schedules. So yeah, we're on half term this week, and then it's 8 weeks until Christmas.
So we've got 2 weeks left.
Mhm.
We've got 2 weeks left, and then. But well, I think we've covered just about everything, and we've even
Mhm.
answered the difficult questions about what needs to happen to women's basketball.
And we
Um,
sorted it in about 27 seconds. So I mean, done.
Done. I mean, we should be on some sort of board of directors position, I think, by now.
Yeah. And if you just pat me like 20 million, done. Although could we maybe we could just quickly talk about how disappointing some of the strips are.
Oh, you're not happy?
I just find some of them, and I'm not going to put it out there because I don't want anyone to feel self-conscious in their strip, but I just think some of them, I was thinking Reebok, I'm thinking retro, I was thinking, like Reebok pumps, like the shoes, obviously they're not going to wear them because knees and like any sort of absorption. But I just feel a lot of them are just like the same strip, different badge. And maybe that's what it has been. But I was hoping for more like that retro vibe and throwing it back a little bit. But no.
So that's enemies with Reebok and Leicester now. Brilliant.
Not enemies as Reebok, but I'd be welcome. I would be happy to join their creative board, even though I don't have a creative bone in my body, like at all. Was asked not to take art past S2, which is the equivalent of like your year 9. I'm like, please, Rona,
Yeah,
do
I
not do
dropped
that.
it in year 9.
Yeah.
No, I think we definitely need to see your like concept for the different teams' jerseys. I think that's a
I don't think
definite
that would
thing we
be
need to see.
fair. I don't think that would be fair because then people would be so wowed and blown away. Like people would just never recover from that. So I think it's best if I keep it in my head.
Okay, we'll let you off then.
Yeah.
But that just about brings us to the end. Make sure that if you're enjoying these episodes, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you're the first to hear about the new episodes when they drop. Did you know, right? 74% of people who watched the first episode weren't subscribed. I mean,
Wow.
come on.
Was
Get
73%.
pressing that button.
Yeah. I was like to my grand, do you have like a YouTube subscription? Because I'll sign you up.
I'll make you a Gmail account and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
sign up and
Yeah.
press the like button. We'll try and
Yeah.
beat last week's account.
But no, I definitely think, like you said, the more people, can whether they want to DM or whether they want to put it out publicly, then it gives us more to talk about and create discussion because that's what we want to do. We want to create discussion and make it more cohesive. It's not to be a divisive thing, it's to make it interesting and yeah, really put the SBLW in the spotlight.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where we go, and we're going to start welcoming some guests on soon. Obviously, we've had some conversations already, and there's some really interesting and like British basketball royalty really that we're going to be getting on soon.
Yeah, most definitely. I very much am looking forward to it.
But again, if you want to hear from anybody from the league, it could be players, coaches, GMs, whoever you want to hear from, make sure you let us know, and we will try and make that happen. But that's all from us, and I look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for having me again.